Well, let's bring John into the conversation. And obviously, John, yesterday was an absolute nightmare for the Eagles and everything that they wish would not happen because it raises questions on everybody. With a loss like yesterday, though, where do the biggest questions lie for you? Front office, coaching staff, players, effort, all that kind of stuff. It's all in play here. So where do you kind of turn your attention to what happened yesterday?
Well, I think there's a micro look at it and a macro look. I think the micro look from losing a game to a terrible team, I think you have to point fingers at the defense and Jim Schwartz specifically, and I feel like they didn't adjust. Should have paid more attention to Ryan Fitzpatrick's history against this team, and there was too many times the corners were left alone with a Devontae Parker, and that's the point you have to understand they can't handle on this particular Sunday. So you have to make an adjustment in a quicker fashion. I look at that from a macro standpoint and how bad this team is in 5-7. I think it starts, and I think it has to start with personnel. It has to start with evaluation. It has to start with this organization realizing there's been too much sentimentality coming off that Super Bowl win. They got to get younger on both sides of the ball. They got to have speed on both sides of the ball, and that's off-season stuff. So because of the situation we're in, and this is shaping up to be, this is going to be the second worst division in history since the NFL made the change to this current format with the 4 divisions in each conference. It's going to be the second worst division in history. So my biggest concern, I tweeted this out earlier, is that a late season run beating bad teams, backdooring yourself into the playoffs, convinces the front office of this team that they're closer than they really are. That's my biggest concern.
You really think, though, if they win these 4, they look at this team? Although, I mean, the only thing I can take a step back and agree with you on would be if they all of a sudden start to get really consistent offensively and say, look, see, if we were healthy all year long with everybody out there, this is what you would have seen. But I don't know. I feel like you got to be able to take a step back and say this team is aging and talent-wise are slipping.
Well, you should. You got to. But if you step back and look at it, what are they going to say? They're going to say, we got a great offensive line. We have the heir apparent to Jason Peters. We have the quarterback. We have a young running back who's shown flash. If Deshaun Jackson at 33 years old was out there, he just turned 33 over the weekend, we're going to be better. Alshon Jeffrey finally played like Alshon Jeffrey yesterday. And remember, they're both under contract for next season at exorbitant prices, so it's very difficult to move on from a cap standpoint. I think it's more likely than you're making it out to be, Mike. And from the defensive perspective, that's been kind of their MO since Jim Schwartz has been here. Just give Jim whatever, and he'll figure it out. So it's on both sides of the ball. And if they run the table here, I could easily see them saying, same thing happened last year. We're this close. We're an Alshon Jeffrey drop away from the NFC Championship game again. Who knows what happens in the NFC Championship game? Maybe you have a Super Bowl rematch. That was the narrative coming into the season. They make the playoffs, win a playoff game, which would be a home game against most likely a Seattle team or a Minnesota team, and we all know they're a different team at Lincoln Financial Field. That's fool's gold. I can see it easily.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Okay, I can agree.
Don't you think,
though?
But like to kind of referee this, wouldn't you think, John, if they did win out, make the playoffs, get smacked up in the first round by Seattle or Minnesota, even in Philly, that would all of a sudden make them think, okay, maybe that was a little bit fool's gold winning out, but we do need to.
Well, I think what John's suggesting is potentially having that game at home, they could win a game.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I have to throw in the possibility that they could also get shellacked in that game.
Well, yeah, if they get waxed, I think it changes. But I think remember, in theory, if that happens, they're playing the best football, obviously, even if it's against bad opponents. In theory, you're healthier. They've gotten players back. Who knows? Maybe hey, you go back to the NFC Championship game and Chris Long with the pressure and Patrick Robinson with the pick six. Special seasons are special for a reason. This isn't going to be a special season. This team is just not good enough from a personnel standpoint. But being in the second worst division in the modern era of the NFL, having the New York Giants, you see what an abject disaster they've been down the stretch of the season. They're going to move on from Pat Shurmur. Their players know it. You know what Dwayne Haskins, Washington, they're playing a little bit better. But the one thing the Eagles have been able to do consistently is stop the run. And that kind of impacts the way Callahan wants to do his job. And that leaves you at week 16. And the Cowboys are as big as a dumpster fire as the Eagles right now. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, this easy schedule in a bad division down the stretch, fool's gold is the perfect description for the potential there. And, yeah, I could see this organization falling into the same trap they fell in last year.
John, what's your thoughts and assessment on Coach Peterson? Because, we talked a lot about the coordinators and maybe Groh needs to go, or maybe they change something up and really shake it up with Schwartz. But I'm not implying Peterson should or will get fired anytime soon. Just how are you assessing him so far through 12 games? And if we're playing the blame game, where does he, I guess, rank?
Well, there are levels to this, and it is amazing how quickly things move, because this is an organization that hadn't won a championship in 57 years, and we're not even 2 years off a Super Bowl championship, the first in the team's history. And there are people already calling for Doug Peterson's job. Now, that's silly. It's not going to happen. It's not even in play. But there are levels to this, and it seems to get sped up in the modern era. So the first part of that is scapegoats, and you're going to have positional scapegoat coaches. Jim Schwartz isn't getting fired. Forget about that. But you look at Press Taylor most notably, and Carson Walsh. I mean, I hate to call for people's jobs, but they're just not going to be back. And the big name is Mike Groh. And part of it comes in, can you sell Mike Groh? There are people who say move him back to being receivers coach because he's the only good receivers coach this team has had in the Peterson era. That's not how this works. He's not going to accept that. So you kind of have to Doug has to do a deep dive and say, does he need more help when it comes to game planning, or is it just more personnel related? I think it's more personnel related, but that's my opinion.
So just real quick to bounce off of that, then what about where does Howie Roseman come into play then with this? Because failed personnel decisions on the coaching staff potentially, as well as, player personnel decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Howie's done a good job building this roster. I think he's had too much sentimentality. I think he brought back too many older players. I think he relied too much on that old philosophy, give up a player a year early versus a year late. He's doing it a year late. You're supposed to do it a year early. Now, it's very difficult coming off a Super Bowl because you have so much warmth in your heart for players that have taken you somewhere where you've never been. You saw the same thing with the Phillies and how long they hung on to clearly descending players from a championship team. It's very difficult. You saw it in New York with Eli Manning. I mean, they should have moved on from Eli Manning years ago. It is very difficult to do, and unfortunately the Eagles are in the midst of it. But he did a bad job. He's got to do a better job. But I'll also say the coaching staff has not done a good job in utilizing what they do have. So I think there's room for blame on each part of it. But the bigger part of it is a lack of talent and relying too much on older players.
John, we all tossed this question around before, and none of us could answer it. So maybe you can settle it for us, but over the next 4 games, what are you more confident in being consistently good, the offense or the defense?
It's a good question. I would say the defense. I do think that was a bit of an anomaly. I do think that if you look at the schedule and you see Jones, Haskins, Jones, 3 of the 4 games, rookie quarterbacks, I mean, Jim feasts on that. That's what he does well. He confuses young quarterbacks like that. And the one veteran quarterback who can handle it in Dak Prescott, it's at Lincoln Financial Field. So, I mean, this team in the Peterson era, I think they're 2nd or 3rd in points allowed in home games. So they've been really good defensively at home, too often really bad defensively on the road. And the one opportunity they could be bad, it's at Lincoln Financial Field. So I think that breaks for them.
So you think offensively, though, you're not coming out of yesterday's game in particular, that's more maybe you're playing Miami than all your offensive ills are cured?
Yeah, I do. And it was nice to see Alshon Jeffrey look like Alshon Jeffrey. And I do think, I mean, he's a good player. He's a proven player. I do think most of his issues have stemmed from the injuries and trying to play through the calf injury, the ankle injury. But we've seen Nelson Aguilar for 5 years now. Did he make a play here and there? Yeah. But they're going to continue to rely on him. I think you know how that story ends. Mm-hmm. And I got to see, this team had a really difficult time. And Doug and this coaching staff had a really difficult time finding an identity post-Deshaun Jackson. And they finally found it. They stumbled into it. They didn't want to do it, but it was Jordan Howard as the lead back, Miles mixed in as the change of pace. And then Jordan Howard got hurt. So Doug continuously says they expect him back. But, I mean, it's 3 weeks now, and there's no coincidence this team has lost its identity again. And they're not going to find it down the stretch unless he gets back. So I don't see this offense doing wonderful things. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, what is there any update or any clarity on Jordan Howard? I mean, we were told a stinger. We're going on to, 4 weeks now?
Yeah, I mean, Doug says it's a strength issue. He can't pass the strength test, so he can't get cleared from a doctor's standpoint. And he claims it's not season-ending. He will be back, but we got 4 games. And we'll see. I mean, you got an extra day, Monday night coming up. But every game he's not out there, it makes you believe more and more. This team does not actually have a great history of telling the truth when it comes to injuries that turn out to be long-term injuries. If he's going to get back out there, he better get back out there quick to make a difference because this team needs an identity. That's for darn sure.
How much of the issues that this team has had this season do you think that they would reappropriate to the injuries that they had? In other words, if we weren't hurt, we would be 3 games up in the division right now if we had a full deck.
A lot. I think they think, in fact, I don't think, I know they think they'd be 2-3 games ahead in this particular division if Deshaun Jackson was out there for every game, which is unlikely because he's done that twice. But from their standpoint, it was, okay, he can miss 2-3 games even, and we can make do. But, yeah, that's one of my issues with this team. They firmly believe they'd be running away with this division if Deshaun Jackson was out there. I don't necessarily disagree with that, too, by the way. I think they would be running away with this division if Deshaun was out there. But he's 33 years old. And to go back and say, okay, he's fine now, we're going to count on him again, I just don't think that's a prudent plan going forward. I never think hope is a plan. You better have a backup plan. Let's put it that way.
Well, it seems like, and we were kind of going back and forth. Like, they had a 4-week stretch where they played, Buffalo, the Bears, the Patriots, and Seattle. And their defense had played well enough that we were all, and I think Mills and Darby were a big reason there, that we all started to feel like, all right, I can start to trust their defense. And then yesterday happened. So my question really is, because I know a lot of people are attacking people like you and me who will say, look, they're still alive in this thing, whether you want to believe it or not. They're an 8.5-point favorite this week. I feel that their defense can get closer to the way they've been playing. Can their offense show more of what they did yesterday? They scored 31 points. And, of course, everyone will say, well, it's against the Dolphins. Well, guess what? You're playing the Giants, who are probably worse, twice. So I guess the question is, can they figure some things out over the next couple of days? Is there anything that you could say, yes, I saw enough here, and here to say, yeah, they can do something over the final 4 games? Or are they such a mess, as a lot of these people think after losing? You lose to the Dolphins, you have no business talking about the playoffs. Which camp are you in, that they can figure it out, or losing to the Dolphins is so bad that there's no way to kind of turn the corner?
No, I'm in the camp of they're going to figure it out for the final month because of the opponents. And that's why I was going back and forth with Ryan today on Twitter. Any optimism you're sensing from me, it has nothing to do with the Eagles. It has to do with the opponent.
I would be in the same camp, by the way. It's not them, it's everybody else.
Yeah. And what I just mentioned before.
By the way, that is the same optimism everybody had on Saturday going into Sunday.
Yeah, well, you're right, Jeff. But in hindsight, I should have paid more attention to Ryan Fitzpatrick's history against the Eagles and against Jim Schwartz.
Fair.
And what he is a 37-year-old guy. He understands how to play the position. Now, he's got limitations. He throws the football too much in the tight windows. He's willing to give you opportunities to get turnovers, and that's the disappointing part from the Eagles' defense standpoint. But he gets hot, and you've seen it throughout his career. And I compared him last week to a streak shooter in the NBA. You saw it. You saw Vinny Johnson get hot. You just saw it. And that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick can do. Young quarterbacks can't do that against Jim Schwartz. They're not going to do the right things. They're not going to see press coverage. They're not going to throw it up. They're not going to have confidence in a 6'3" receiver. That's just the nature of young quarterbacks. They don't understand fully what they're seeing, how to play the position. And that's where I said Jim kind of feasted and always has feasted on younger quarterbacks, and that's what you have for 3 of the 4 weeks. And then the second part is, throughout, for whatever reason, and the old cliche in the NFL is that what travels, defense and the running game. Well, it isn't true for the Eagles. Mm-hmm. Their defense has never traveled. It's been awful on the road, and it's been great at home, and it's been great at Lincoln Financial Field. Well, they start at Lincoln Financial Field against the Giants and a rookie quarterback, so I think that's going to clean that up right there. Then you do have to go on the road, but it's against the Washington Redskins and a rookie quarterback. And then the one difficult game you have, again, it's at Lincoln Financial Field. So you saw what this defense did against Tom Brady and the Patriots, against Russell Wilson more so, and the Seahawks. They were good. They tend to be good at Lincoln Financial Field. So if they're going to have a hiccup, look, they could obviously lose to anybody. They just proved that. But I think it's more likely against the veteran quarterback, and the one veteran quarterback they're playing is going to be at Lincoln Financial Field.
So do you think it's more likely the Eagles go 4-0 or any other record for the rest of the way? 3-1, 2-2, 0-4, whatever.
Well, I think it's more likely they trip up. I've seen no evidence of this team being able to get on a streak where they can win 4 games against, Appalachian State, never mind NFL teams. And again, any optimism stems from the opponents. The opponents are that bad where it wouldn't surprise me if I woke up after Week 17 the Eagles were NFC East champions. Do I think it's likely? It's 50%, or it's less than 50%?
Right, and you could say they go 3-1, and that might be good enough because Dallas
Yeah,
is so
the
bad.
They can go 2-2.
By the way, I expect the Cowboys to lose on Thursday night in Chicago. The Bears are playing well again, well enough. They're playing good defensively. Trubisky tends to make a couple throws because people don't have confidence in him, and they let him get too comfortable in the pocket. And that's how they've been winning games lately. That's been their formula. I think they're going to win again. So that's one loss. Cowboys also have the Rams on the schedule. They played better yesterday. That's a good team. They're up against it. They're essentially playing playoff games right now if they want to make it back to the playoffs. I mean, that's how bad this division is. It is, as I said, it is going to be the second worst division in the modern era in the history of this league.
What's the
It is
first?
awful. It was the NFC South year where 49ers were 2-14. I forget the exact year, but it's going to be.
You had
and
that
right
year.
now,
You had that year 2014, and the Panthers were 7-8-1 and made the playoffs, and that's when everybody was
it
like,
wasn't that division. There was a worse division because
Okay.
the bottom teams in the NFC West, they both won. I think one won 2 and one won 3. So it was sort of lopsided towards the bottom. But that was the worst division, and this one is worse. As we stand here today, the winning percentage is worse. But because they all play each other, somebody's got to win those games, so they're going to end up a little bit better. So you could argue it's the worst division. I mean, this is historically bad. That's how bad this division is.
John, do you have confidence that this offense can, get a touchdown in a big, important game down the stretch to win the game or, when they really need it?
No, I don't have confidence in anything with this offense.
Yeah.
I did have a little confidence, as I said. I thought they developed a bit of an identity there. In the back-to-back games where Jordan Howard touched it, I think 23 and then 20, maybe 21, 22, whatever it was. I was starting to gain a little bit confidence in what they were doing. But I mean, their numbers, even in theory on paper, everyone says, well, you got to play 12 personnel. And Zach Ertz had one of his worst games as a pro. And part of that was fighting through an injury, which people don't realize. And you don't expect that to continue. But overall, through the entire season, they've been terrible in 12 personnel in the passing game. The numbers are awful. And so even what they're perceived to be good at, they're not good at. And that, to me, is an off-season problem.
all right, Johnny Mac, we got plenty more, I'm sure. We got countdown to kickoff tonight, and obviously the Eagles now play Monday night. They get ready for the Giants, who lost yesterday to the Packers. They've lost 8 straight games. New York has. The Eagles open up as an 8.5-point favorite against Green Bay. And, of course, you can hear that game Monday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can also hear Dallas and Chicago Thursday night here on 97.3. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thanks, guys.
And Johnny Mac, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.